Hey everyone, I'm Haley. This is Bitterkitten Crafts. You can find me on Instagram as Bitterkitten Crafts. And today we're going to be ranking some of my ancient FOs. So I have this huge bin of stuff that I knitted from probably 2017, 2018 up until 2020 that I really don't use, don't wear. I wear a couple of the pieces in this bin like pretty infrequently, but I'd really like to kind of clean it out and get a fresh start for this new year. I know it's February now, but my big goal for 2023 is to kind of eliminate my stash. And that includes my stash of old FOs I don't use. So if you're like me, I have this cubby full of FOs that I regularly wear. They're in my like regular wardrobe rotation. And then I have, like I said, this huge bin of stuff I made 4 or 5 years ago that I really don't wear, don't plan to use. It's a lot of beautiful like luxury yarn actually too. So I'm really hoping to kind of clean out this bin and get it together to where I can use some of the yarn again, or put a couple of the items into my regular wardrobe rotation as opposed to keeping them in a bin under my bed. So we can start. I'm just gonna start pulling stuff out of the bin and kind of showing it to you and talking about it. I may have to split this video into 2 because there are way more things than I even remember knitting in this bin, like actually maybe like 30 things. So I don't think we're going to get through all of them in this one sitting, but I'll definitely be sure to have like a part 2 if it comes to that, because like I said, this is like probably 30 finished objects that I really should be either frogging or letting them see the light of day, because this is like kind of a bummer looking at it. It's like hundreds of hours worth of work in this one bin that I just like simply don't use, which is, yeah, like pretty much a big bummer. So I'm really hoping to change that. I've been really mindfully choosing the patterns I'm making kind of from the last year. So now I have a collection of wearable sweaters, and I'd like to keep that up, and I'd like to use some of this yarn and transform it into a more wearable garment for myself. So when I first started knitting, I didn't know anything about gauge, have never gauge watched in my life still. I didn't know anything about fiber choice, so I was choosing like silk patterns for scarves. You'll see a couple of those. Didn't really care necessarily if it was like a wearable piece. I was really into like making friends on Instagram and kind of promoting my page, and it ended up in me having like a pretty wide selection of garments that I'm literally never gonna wear. So like I said, I've definitely transitioned away from that into much more wearable pieces. But anyways, with that, let's get started. I'm just going to be starting to pull stuff out of this bin and kind of show it to you and tell you whether or not I'm going to keep it or sit on it or frog it. Probably most of this stuff will hopefully be frogged. Fingers crossed for that. It might take me a couple months to actually frog it, but at least I will know after this video where everything kind of stands. But yeah, let's get started. This is the WHITETHORN cowl. This is a pattern by Pip and Pin. And it's knit in a wool silk cotton blend. So this is kind of what I was talking about with like poor fiber choice. So why did I knit like a winter bandana in wool and silk? I truly don't know. And it's not a super wearable piece. I did the increases here like really tightly, so the bandana does kind of like flip up on itself when you wear it. And it's just not like a practical piece, not exactly like a logical make. Like I said, like this is silk and wool. So I think this will absolutely be frogged. Look at the yarn. It's so pretty. It's like neppy. I have one more ball of dark purple of this yarn. So I think that between those two, I could really make, this is like a sport weight. I think it's like 300 yards. So if I have 600 yards of this yarn, I could definitely make something cute and much more wearable. And here in DC, it does get really, really hot, so a wool silk blend is like a pretty perfect choice for a summer t-shirt. So this is absolutely going in the frog pile. Really cute pattern, but the bandana style is just not for me a lot of the time. And the yarn choice was really poor for this garment. I think this would be really pretty knit up like in a mohair held with something to kind of accentuate the lace. I did block this like within an inch of its life. As you can kind of see, the lace is like really flattened. That's because I was trying to get rid of the flip for the neck and it didn't work. So, yep, one for the frog pile. This is one that I may frog or I may kind of sit on and put through the wash. So this is the BOBBLE bralette. The designer has since discontinued the pattern but also put her name below. This was the first ever test knit I did, and this was in like February of 2020. and it's knit in acrylic, like Michael's brand acrylic yarn, and you can see, like, I wasn't the greatest just like seamstress or knitter at the time. I made some really poor kind of choices in terms of, like, here's another spot where I wove in my ends really poorly, and I had never done bobbles before, and if you look at them, like, you can kind of tell there's like some holing going on, like, yeah, that's my finger. And it was also maybe the first time or second time I had done cables, so like for that I'm really proud of this piece. Now if I were to choose this garment, like, I probably wouldn't choose to knit this. This is entirely knit in reverse stockinette, so this was all purled, and then you do bobbles and cables. So like, I don't know what I was thinking choosing this for my first test knit. This was definitely a labor of love. I did wear this a ton when I first made it, to the point where there's like a stain on the back here of probably food. Yeah. So this is gonna go through the wash, like, with my regular laundry, and I'll kind of see what happens to it, and decide what to do from there, because this does fit me really well. It does fit me really well. It does, like, it's definitely a labor of love, so if I can kind of salvage this somehow, I would love to. I was thinking about maybe trying to, like, crochet a single crochet, like, right there where it's, like, really hideous, and there's, like, some ends sticking out. I'd love to salvage this somehow, but I really just didn't know what I was doing. I, like, simply had never tested it before, or I'm assuming I had never done, like, a 3-needle bind off before, because wow. Yeah, so this one is definitely in the middle. I'm not going to immediately frog, but it's definitely not going into my regular rotation as of right now. That was the Bobble Bralette. But like I said, the pattern's discontinued, but if you have any questions about it, you can definitely email or message me or comment below, because it's a really cute pattern. So this yarn is from the Fiber Company. I'm not quite sure of the name of it, but I'll put it below, because this is like a camel yak silk wool blend. Look at the heathering. I got this yarn as a gift, and this is definitely the yarn that would not be in my budget otherwise if I hadn't received it as a gift. And I sat on it for a long time, and then I eventually made this scarf because it was just too pretty to knit with anything else, and I didn't have that much yardage. So this is a beautiful scarf. This isn't really something I wear like day to day. It's definitely something I save for like business casual situations, which frankly I don't find myself in that many business casual situations because I work in art, stuff like that. So I work with kids and I work with art, so yeah, not that many business casual situations I find myself in, but this was a really beautiful project. There are some like issues with it where it's knit on the bias, and it is not the I-cord edge. Like, I didn't give myself any leeway, like, really at all. I feel like I should probably reblock this because it's been several years since I blocked it. And it is a beautiful make. Like, I love this project. I do wear it pretty often, like when the circumstances arise. And the colorways are stunning. Like, look how pretty that is. So this is definitely something I'm keeping. I think that the pattern was just free on Ravelry. It's just like a bias. Yeah, you can tell. I like recently learned how to weave in my ends so they don't look like this, but I might go back and redo that because ugh. So yeah, I think this was just a free Ravelry pattern. I can't even remember, but it's just like you cast on 120 stitches and then knit it on the bias with an I-cord edge. And then I just like striped in the other color. So this was a really easy pattern. And definitely one I'm keeping. So that's one for keep. Like, honestly, probably won't be that many more for the keep pile, but that is what it is. So this is another project that literally never saw the light of day. This is Ben Tosh yarn, and it's yellow and pink striped together, which, like, interesting color choice, right? Interesting. So this is the HEYA tank by KIYOMI BURGIN, who I actually really love her patterns, and I cast this pattern on again very, very recently, about a month ago. Like I said, I'm trying to use up my stash, and that includes my stash of patterns in my library, and so that includes this pattern, but I made a lot of changes to the way that I'm knitting this now. This is a pattern that's knit flat in 2 panels, and then you seam it together, and I was not a seamstress in like 2019, no, I think this is 2018. when I knit this. Look at that seaming, like holy moly, that's like squishy, it's like dense, it's like 7 layers of yarn there. And I think at the time I was like, oh, like I'll never have to pull this out, so it doesn't matter. But now I will pull it out, so it does matter. So this pattern, I did make some mods, and I also knit it in single ply wool. So like really poor yarn choice for the garment, which is a little tank top. Really poor yarn choice. I added this split hem. These ribbing edges are not supposed to be there on the pattern. And so in the version I just cast on, it's in 100% silk. Really light fingering weight. I knit it in the round. I made that mod to kind of just alleviate some stress for myself of seaming. And I am really hopeful that that one will see the light of day a lot more than this one did, because this is like atrocious, honestly. However, my 3 needle bind off improved immensely from the last project I showed you, so that's awesome. But other than that, this is like a major flop. The colors are really pretty, but I don't think now I would necessarily wear like these colors together. Yeah, this project, I mean, you can see the seaming like even on the outside of the garment, like that's atrocious. That's atrocious. This is absolutely in the frog pile. Kind of an assessment as to whether or not I'll use the yarn again. Like who's to say? Because it might just get donated because it's single ply merino wool, which I don't really love to knit with. I had a big obsession with it when I first found out about Madeline Tosh because the colors were stunning. And now I realize that you can find stunning colors in not single ply that are much more durable and kind of useful like out in the world. But that was when I got really excited because my budget was small and I had 400 yards of yarn for the same amount of money as like a worsted weight skein, and I didn't really conceive that like the worsted weight skein might actually be like more useful at the end of the day. So that is what it is. Moving on. Moving on to the next one. So this is another project for the frog pile, another project, as you saw, I didn't leave in my ends on the last one. This one has also literally never seen the light of day, and also has, like, for some garment that should have maybe 5 or 6 ends, this one has 90, and I literally don't know why. But they're also all knotted together, which is cute. So this is the My Little Secret crop by Jessie MAED. This is a pattern that she published in the spring of 2020 as a gift to everyone who was kind of experiencing the pandemic. And I knit it for the free knit along. And I chose this MCN blend that is like literally the color of my skin. So poor color choice there. And I also knit it in fingering weight, and it's supposed to be a DK weight yarn. So I actually had already knit this yarn into the Ripple Bralette, and I really hated how it was knitting up, so I frogged it. So then I knit it into this, which, like, logically, they're really similar garments. The Ripple Bralette, if you're not familiar, it's also a Jessie MAED pattern. The only difference, really, is that the 3x3 rib splits at the bust and is 2 little V-neck cups, as opposed to this front. But other than that, they're the same garment, so like I don't really know why I thought that this would be a better choice. This will definitely be frogged. The yarn is beautiful. It really is pretty. Like, it's the color of my skin, but I'll see if I can do something with it, because it is a cashmere blend and it is like a pretty luxurious fiber. So I think I can probably whip something up with it, hopefully. I was thinking maybe granny squares, and doing the Ariana cardigan by Amy Gerstoffers with all of the scraps of this yarn that I have kind of lying around. So that's a third one for the frog pile, and that is a pattern that I think I may have mentioned this earlier. I did knit a couple patterns like really unsuccessfully, and then frog them and then re-knit them like pretty successfully later on, and I'll show you a couple examples of that. That's a really good example of that. And actually, let me see if I can find the kind of sequel to that. Yeah, so this is like the secondary follow-up to that project. This is also the My Little Secret crop by Jessie MAED, and this is, in my opinion, like a much more successful, oh, this is inside out. This is like a much more successful iteration of that project, where I use the scraps, actually you can tell from that tank top, to make this really pretty fade. And I'm actually really happy with this one. This is one that I followed the instructions. I knit it in fingering weight held double. I did this cool kind of retro striping on the band. And this is one that I really should pull out of this bin and put into my regular rotation again because it's cute, to be honest. This is like one of the few projects that was really successful from like 3 years ago. So this is definitely one I'm going to be keeping and putting back into my little cubby here of actual wearable things. Because this is cute, and the fade is actually really, really pretty. I think when it's stretched out, which is how it's worn like this, the fade is much more gradual between the yellow and the pink, but on camera here it's showing up like pretty striated. But yeah, this is definitely a keep, definitely more successful than the previous couple projects I've showed you. And I definitely, like I said, that was a trend of mine to kind of start something and then see that it wasn't working and finish it and not touch the ends, weave in the ends or anything, and then immediately cast on a second one. So I've actually made 3 My Little Secret crops. I believe the third one's in here as well. And this is another example of like really poor fiber choice, honestly. Beautiful, beautiful project, beautiful yarn, but just like not the fiber that I should have been using for this project. So this is Haiku 100% alpaca. It was like one of those huge cakes that like fades colors, and it's really pretty. Like, it's really, really cute. The thing is that about alpaca that I didn't know at the time, it doesn't hold its shape. It does lose its shape, and it's so drapey and heavy, especially when it's knit at this like really tight gauge, that it just like really didn't hold its shape. It didn't kind of become that wearable out in the world. Once I had worn it a couple times, I think you can tell like it did stretch. But this is one that I have worn in public. I have like actually used, actually woven the ends and everything. So this is another for the keep pile. I'm kind of sad it's been sitting in this bin. I'd like to see what I can do to kind of retain some structure. I was thinking I might re-knit the straps in like a wool, because they are, what's the word, they fall off like your shoulders. But it's really cute. And so this is the My Little Secret crop by Jessie MAED again. I don't believe it's still a free pattern, but at the time it was. And the fade of this yarn actually is really nice. It goes from brown to red, you know, all the way up. So this is a keeper. So far we're tied with keep and frog. But you'll see these are, like, the ones I just showed you are actually some of the better, like, the best ones in this bin. So I'll show you as we go on. Like, some of them are much significantly worse quality than others. This is one that's definitely going to be frog. This is the Ripple Crop Top Worsted, also by Jessie MAED. This is knit in, like, Lorna's Laces Multi, and I had to do a lot of management with the colors to make sure it didn't pool. I was cutting and weaving in the ends like every, you can maybe see inside, like every couple yards I was like snipping and weaving in ends to manage like the pooling situation, and then I weaved in the ends inside out. You can see there. And this was like an utter flop of a project. I did not gauge swatch. It's way too small. It's like very tiny. It's not practical to have a worsted weight wool t-shirt in DC. It's like simply not a usable piece of fabric, and the colors are honestly wild. Like, this is not a wearable piece. It's simply not a wearable piece. I'd really like to frog this and use this yarn maybe for like a baby gift or something, because it's very pooled and like choppy. I have one more skein of it left, and you can maybe see what I mean. It pools into these wild, like, lightning flashes across, which is beautiful in certain situations, but not in this one, if I'm honest. So this is definitely a flop. This is a frog, has never been worn in public or seen the light of day. This is an example where the pattern says that the gauge should be a lot looser than this, but I went with my instinct, I guess, which is that at the time I liked everything to be a super tight gauge. So you can see here, like, you can't even see my finger. This is a really tight gauge, and I thought that when it was a tighter gauge it meant it was like more like machine looking, like it looked like it had been made on a machine, and I thought that that's how knitting should be. That's part of the reason this one's like, it's a super tight gauge, it's insane. So this one, definitely not a wearable piece. This probably took 3 balls of worsted weight yarn, when now I've made this project again and it only took like 1.5 balls because of the gauge difference. So this is definitely a frog, but the yarn will absolutely be reused for a project for... Let's quickly do a crochet project. So this is one of the first crochet beanies I ever made. Obviously I did not know about jogless stripes at the time. Yeah. It's pretty cute though, like as things go. It's not wearable, but it could be worse, especially for like a first project. This was the first time I ever did crochet ribbing, and for some reason it's also tiny on my head. Like, it doesn't go down any further, but there's clearly more space in the hat. So that's like a bit of a that's a bit of a flop. This is the Karen Pantone yarn, and I did actually make a sweater out of this yarn as well. It's my Aquamarine. And this is not a wearable hat, but it's something that I've held on to for like the emotional aspect of the fact that this is the first crochet beanie I ever made successfully. So I'll probably never let go of it, but I'll also never like wear it in public. So that kind of goes in the middle between like frog and keep and put in rotation. It's like a maybe. I'm definitely going to keep it, but I'm definitely never ever going to wear it. On the other hand, I do have this crochet beanie that I do wear, and it's very, it's also big, but I really like it. It's just like really big and cozy and floppy. And this is the HEYA yarn, Red Heart HEYA yarn, so it's got like eyelash kind of texture to it. And this was made, it's crocheted by just making a huge rectangle, like a huge rectangle, and then seaming up the top. So there's no decreases at the top or anything. It's just kind of like squished up. But it's really warm. It's really cozy. I wear this a lot to nanny because kids are rough on stuff and I don't like want to worry about it. And it does have a pom-pom made of the leftovers of that hat, which is fun. I was on a real pom-pom kick. This is from probably 2016, like maybe earlier. So that's really cool to still have stuff I've made now like 8 or 9 years ago. So let's go ahead and wrap up. I'm going to show you guys one more for the frog pile, and then we're going to go ahead and stop and do a part 2 because I'm approaching 30 minutes and that's just like too much talking for any of us. So I'm going to go ahead and show you one more flop, one more frog pile one, and then we can move on and I'll be back for part 2. So this is this is a lesson in gauge. So this is Jason's Cashmere Hat by Sweet Fiber, and if you see my Instagram page, you know I've made this pattern like probably 10 times now. It's a really excellent free pattern. It's a wonderful free pattern. However, this was knit before I knew what gauge was. So this is like a 100% alpaca beanie, and it's really tiny. It's literally so tiny. It's like a child, if that, a child size hat. I don't know like what I was thinking. I think I knit this on size 3s, but the pattern calls for size 5s, and I was like, oh, it'll be fine because alpaca stretches. It doesn't stretch that much. Like, this is not a wearable garment. It's really, it's like absolutely, it's like absolutely child size. But the yarn is really soft and beautiful. It's 100% baby alpaca. So hopefully I can kind of maybe somehow salvage this. Clearly it's not enough to knit an adult size anything with it because it's very little amount of yarn. Maybe this was like somebody else's scrap or something. This is definitely one I don't have to frog. I can find a child who might wear this, but even for a child, like, this is quite small. And the intent with this was to knit a full-sized adult beanie. So major flop on that one, but I've held on to it for like somehow a child. I don't know, my nanny boys are too big for this actually, and they're 5, so that's not good. But this is going to be the last pattern we talk about today. I'll definitely be back with a part 2. So thanks so much for watching. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram as BitterKittenCrafts, and have a good afternoon.